back, everyone. This is a joint podcast between Silver Conundrum and Expat Stacker, the Silvercast. How you doing today, Silver Conundrum?
Oh man, I'm doing pretty good. I can't complain. How about yourself?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you. So we are in episode 2 and recording part 2 now. And the topic we've been discussing is about considerations before and while and even after selling precious metals. Before we get into that, we do have to say that Expat Stacker and Silver Conundrum are not financial advisors or experts. Investing is risky and comes with the chance that you could lose money. Talk to a licensed professional before making any decision about what to do with your money. This video and all of the content on our channels is for entertainment and educational purposes only and should not be taken as financial advice. Right, so last time we were talking about do's and don'ts for when it comes time to sell. And we kind of talked, a little bit about knowing what you're stacking, so that way when it's time to sell, people can't really take advantage of you. We talked about talking to experts on learning the laws in your locality, so that way you won't get hit super hard on taxes, and you can use the laws to your advantage, especially for whatever your goals are, and you can stack what's best for you in your area at the time. And we talked about doing kind of like practices and dry runs. So if you guys haven't seen that episode, go check it out. So I think it's also really great to share some of our personal experiences of examples of how and when and why we sold precious metals. I only have really one example of when I've sold. So I think you've been stacking for quite a while longer than I have. So why don't you go ahead and give us an example or two of when you sold, why you sold, how you sold it, where you sold, and all as much information as you can, so that people can kind of learn from your experience about selling.
Fair enough. So this is a don't keep up with the Joneses scenario. So when I was, I don't know, man, early 20s, when the AR-15s and the guns started making a real big comeback in the United States, I would say what kind of gun was it? There's definitely an AR-15. But anyway, I didn't have the cash on hand. So me being me, I looked at my silver stack. I was like, I can get rid of a few ounces, and I can sell those, and I can go buy me an AR. This way, me and my buddies can go out and do stuff. That was one of those things where I sold it to my local coin shop, and I sold it at there. It was 10% down and 10% up. And what I mean by that is, when they buy precious metals, they would always buy 10% under spot, and they would sell to you 10% over spot. So I actually took a loss on a lot of that stuff because those guns wind up taking a loss in value over time. So I would highly suggest people not try to keep up with the Joneses. If you can save your fiat currency and just go buy what you want to buy, I highly would recommend that. Because getting rid of about 20 or 30 ounces of your silver just to go buy something that you want, not that you need, that's something we definitely don't want to do. We want to try to avoid that if at all possible, because it takes a lot of effort to try to recover that kind of ounces. So I would definitely mark that up as a don't do that. Instead, save your currency. Another time I've actually sold silver. I've sold silver quite a few times. But another time that I sold silver was when my son was born. So we actually had some medical bills that were unexpected, and our insurance didn't cover a lot of it. And one of the things that we had to do, the hospital said that we actually had to have X amount of dollars up front because our insurance didn't cover it, like I said. And in order for them to take care of my wife the way that we wanted her taken care of, well, we had to come up with a very substantial amount of money. And for some people, $10,000 is not substantial. For me at that time, it was. And like I said, that's about the time the Obamacare stuff came in effect. And our previous insurance that we had, it didn't cover everything like it was supposed to anymore. And the hospitals were all in a, I don't know, I would call it tissy. They were worried about, well, were they going to get covered? Were they not going to get covered? So their answer to the whole solution was, we pay everything out of pocket, and then whatever the insurance company covers, they'll reimburse us. And that's pretty much how it worked. So my wife and I, we took a good chunk of our stack and we cashed it out. And the way we did that was Facebook was a thing. So we did Facebook and we sold to local friends. We used our coin shop, but we explained to him what was going on. And in our previous video that we did, we talked about building that rapport with your local coin shop. And this is where that rapport comes into play. I actually explained to him what we were doing and why we were doing it. And he actually gave me a little bit of a premium on everything that I sold him because of why I was selling everything. And because he's known me since I was a child, he actually took it upon himself to give me just, I want to say it was probably like 5 or 10% over spot price at that time. So I didn't have to sell quite as many ounces as I would normally would have to come up with the money in order to have my son born. So that's one of those scenarios where everybody needs to, like what we talked about before, have a good rapport with your local coin shop. They're not monsters; they're a business, and they have to make money too. But they also understand that when you're in a financial hardship, they'll step up to help you out too. And if you have a good one, they will step up to help you. At least mine did. Another time that we actually sold precious metals is when my wife and I decided to pay off our house. Back in 2011, 2012, that's when we pretty much sold every single ounce of silver that we had, minus a few select pieces. And we ended up going through, I want to say it was APMEX. And the way we did that was we did it in I want to say it was $9,999 increments, basically under $10,000. This way, we didn't have to pay taxes on anything. So this came from a financial advisor, something that you talked about in the last video. So when we did that, we actually had to sell off in increments our stack to APMEX. And they ended up buying our silver at a pretty decent price. And now, mind you, it's expensive to ship it out to them. But we did it that way. It was a lot easier. And we did some stuff on Facebook to help alleviate some of the speed of selling stuff off. And we used our local coin shop. But sadly, they couldn't afford every single thing that we had for the quantities that we were selling it at. But when it was all said and done with, we were able to pay off our house and still have cash left over. So if people were able to stack long term and they stack the right type of metals and the right kind of numismatics, semi-numismatics, and just regular bullions, they can actually do a lot with their stack in the long run. It just depends on how they do it. If they're not playing keep up with the Joneses like I did early in my stacking, then they'll have way more later on. And they got to remember too, don't buy a whole bunch of silver that's going to hurt you right now, because if you do, you're just going to sell it tomorrow, and you don't want to do that. That's not what silver stacking is about. It's about buying what you can afford comfortably. This way, you can still pay all your bills. You can still afford the things that you want or need without even touching your stack. So once you get into that mindset, you'll be able to do just fine. And you don't have to worry about much of anything. So once you obtain what you have, your whole goal is to know when to get out and when to sell. And it's like you said before, knowing the rules and the right people to go to, that's a big part of it.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, thank you for explaining that, including the, the mistake, that you made, but that you learned from and that you share with everyone now. That is a great way, for people to learn without having to, make the same mistake themselves. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of good information there for everybody. I've really agree, especially with that last point of making it sustainable for yourself, so that you can more or less choose, when you want to sell, without being forced to, because you were doing it at an unsustainable pace, or you were not considering other responsibilities, financial responsibilities. Um, for me, I only really have one time when I've sold, and basically, I took some generic Korean bars, some silver bars and some gold bars, and I wanted to convert that into something that was more recognizable internationally, because I am an expat, but I don't know how long, if forever, I'm going to be in Korea. So, and I decided that it was a good time to do it, and there was something that I wanted to specific that I wanted to convert into. So I just did it at that time. I called around to some different bullion dealers here, and it did turn out that the best place to sell it to was the place that I bought it from, because it's generic bullion, but they gave a little bit of a premium to buy back their own stuff. Um, so I got a little lucky there. And I all in all, I took a little bit of a loss when all said and done, but nothing too huge. And since then, I did this earlier in the year. Since then, I've definitely recovered that, because I converted a little bit more into gold, and gold has gone up a lot this year. So, um, but that was also, I wouldn't say it was a mistake, but it was just a little bit of me not knowing what was what when I first started stacking, because a lot of that stuff I bought early on and it was generic, and I didn't know my market that well. And that was, I went there and bought it in person, and I have a good relationship with them, and it's recognized pretty well here in Korea. But overall, I would say that I want my stack to be a little more mobile if I end up in another country or something like that. So that's basically my only experience, and quite different than I think what um, other people probably their reasons for selling. Because like I said, I'm thinking about possibly having to take this bullion into another country, and I'm not really sure that's a concern that a whole lot of people have. I do know there are a few other expats out there, so who have stacking channels, so maybe they do think about that kind of thing as well. Or maybe it's somebody who's in the United States who has family in another country or something. But I think it's a little bit of a unusual consideration. But that's the consideration I have to make. So that was basically my only experience with selling, and it just had to do with not knowing 100% fully exactly what I was doing in the beginning. But I kind of also knew that I didn't know exactly what I was doing in the beginning. And luckily, when I got into stacking, the prices were not too incredibly high. It was back in like late 2017, 2018 when I started stacking. And when I had got those pieces, I mean, silver was like $12 or $13 an ounce at that time. So, like I said, didn't take too huge of a hit on it. And I kind of knew at the beginning that you're new to this, expat stacker, you're new to this. So don't put the pedal to the metal, right, just yet, right? Like, dip your toe in the water, and, don't be gun shy, but don't just, go for broke right away from the beginning. So I think that helped a little bit. And now I feel like I have a little bit more of a feel on things, but I'm still relatively new compared to a lot of people, and you can always learn something no matter how much experience you have. So that's my little story. Do you have any other anecdotes of maybe not you personally, but somebody you know?
Actually, yeah, I do. One of the guys I got into stacking with me, he wanted up. So here's what happened with him. He wanted up buying some silver, and when he bought it when silver was low back in, was it April, May time frame? I guess it was about when it dropped down to about $12, $13 an ounce.
Of
Well,
2020?
when he did, yeah, this year.
Okay.
So he bought some silver this year, and well, recently, I'd say as much as probably about 2 months ago, he actually sold it. And when I asked him what he was selling it for, he wound up selling it because he just wanted to double his money. And simple, when I tried to find out why he was trying to double his money instead of just hanging on to it, he said, well, he really wasn't going to be stacking forever. He didn't see it as a long-term investment. He saw it as a short-term investment, and what a better time to cash out than right now. And when he did was he wound up paying off one of his vehicles with it. And I just found that part out. Matter of fact, after we did our last video, when we made that mistake on the video cast, when I was talking to him about it, he actually told me he paid off one of his vehicles because he had two 100-ounce bars that he sold. And he wound up using that money to pay off one of his vehicles to get out from under some debt. This way it would free him up to do whatever he wanted to do later. And when he told me about that, I was like, okay, that makes perfect sense, man. I wish you had told me. I would have bought the silver from you, Goober. And the only thing he did was laugh. He wound up selling the silver on Facebook Marketplace for about 15% over spot price, man. As soon as he put it up there, someone bought it from him instantly. So this goes back to what we said in the first video, knowing your market. And he was selling Scottsdale Stacker 100-ounce bars, and he got 15% over spot price. So, and he'd use that to pay off some of his debt. So that's something people can think about. If you want to pay off debt, know your market, know your timing, know everything.
Absolutely. Man, that's an incredible deal and a great story.
Man.
And, I mean, I was thinking about it. You might also even be able to sell silver to avoid getting into debt over something, right? Like if you want to buy a new vehicle and you don't want the debt burden that comes along with that, you don't want to pay interest, you don't want to be under that. If that means that much to you, that could be a reason as well if you do it the right way. So yeah, that's a really good point. All right, well, appreciate you sharing your depth of knowledge and your experience with us of yourself and other people really appreciate you taking the time to do that. Anything else you want to say about your experience when it comes to selling silver, personal experiences?
That's pretty much about everything, brother. At least in a nutshell.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure we could probably stay here all day, trading stories and stuff. But I think that's what you shared with everybody is really, really. There's a lot there, and I mean, shoot, I might even go back and listen to this a couple of times because I think there's a lot of valuable information in there. So thanks a lot, and catch you guys on the next one. Take care, everybody.
Later, everyone.
All right, awesome.